Welcome to Hangxiety with Lisa T. I'm so glad you are joining me on my morning anti-anxiety routine as I dissect whatever issues or news stories from around the world and in space happen to be inhabiting my brain on that particular day. I'm Lisa Timmons, or Timmons Lisa, depending on how you know me, and I like to listen to soothing elevator music while processing some of the most absurd, terrifying, celebrity-obsessed, full-blown late-stage capitalism, climate change, disaster-based news you can possibly imagine, while also narrating over it in a gently informative, classic radio-style DJ voice because, hey, sometimes you just need to hear it that way. Welcome to Hangxiety with Lisa T. I'm your host, Lisa T, and today I'm here to chat with you about the fact that I have been processing a ton of new information in my brain these past few weeks as a result of really trying to educate myself in detail about the situation in Palestine and how it relates to my previously held worldview. And like many people I know, this new information is causing me to examine the world in new and often challenging ways that might bump up against at least some of what I had previously believed to be true. But in many ways, a lot of questions were answered for me in this revelation, questions that I had never felt empowered to ask until now. So I wanted to use this episode to explore the concept of ontological shock, which is a term used to describe the idea of what a human experiences when they learn something new about the world that completely changes the way they view it moving forward for the rest of their lives. But before I jump into that, I just want to talk a little anxiety talk. First of all, I have to say, despite the fact that I've been witnessing some of the most surreal, real-time footage of the most horrific acts of humanity on my phone, I'm strangely less anxious than I've been in months. For while I've seen a lot that has upset me, I've also been in awe of the poetic sentiments expressed by both those in and outside of Palestine, who are still fighting valiantly to keep each other alive, caring for one another as a global family, all while grieving an unthinkable loss of life, and also somehow managing to celebrate the enduring spirit of the Palestinian people through it all. On my cell phone, I have borne witness to the living of life in its most raw and pure state by individuals decades younger than myself. I have learned so much from them as they are being forced to lead the world by example. I'm also seeing this in the fierce faces of the digital creators and independent journalists and activists, united in a global conversation about oppression and freedom that has never been discussed more openly and in a chorus than it is today. And it's this calm they display during these most chaotic of times that I'm hoping to channel, because this is a conversation that has only just begun. And we all need our wits about us if we are going to continue to successfully wage this war of opinion. Truth versus convenience. Morality over money. Love over profits. That said, I've been smoking a lot of flower lately, mostly in microdoses with my bong. Again, for me, my stomach will get queasy at the drop of a hat, so the body high that flower provides is quick and effective enough to immediately quell any of my queasiness so that I can get something in my stomach. It was eggs yesterday, and this morning it was a smoothie. And some coffee for focus, and water alternately, and before you know it, I'm ready to sit down and do some research. And guys, because I did mention that I smoke my bong, I am not sponsored by them, but I do actually use a Moose Labs little silicone mouthpiece on the bong, and you can put a little filter inside. It catches a resin and it catches the smoke. And I actually have graduated to a double filter situation, and it's the corn fiber filter. So 2 corn fiber filters. I don't have one right here, but you can see on the website on Moose Labs. And I have a subscription. They're biodegradable. It's great. This little silicone thing is also good for sharing if you want to share with people and you want to have your own. So that is all. Oh, the other thing I'm doing is I'm dog sitting again. Currently, there is a dog here, and it is actually a really great way to force me to go out for a walk in the sunshine, which I definitely need more of. I found out that I have soft white lady bones, which means that I could potentially get osteoporosis if I don't play my cards correctly. So I do need to be getting more vitamin D in the sun. I'm also finding that needing the sunshine makes me more likely to actually get up and take the dog out for a walk, every 5 minutes, which, it doesn't bother me. I'm like, I should be doing this. This is my vitamin vitamin. And so note to self, be more proactive about taking walks after Luna leaves this time. So that is a promise I make to you. All right, so now that we are all decidedly less anxious, let's dive into this whole ontological shock business that everybody's talking about. Full disclosure, a lot of the information that inspired me to do this entire episode came from various episodes of Kelly Chase's podcast, the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast. She comes from a scientific family with an extensive professional background in marketing. The result is a highly educational and entertaining podcast that tackles the UFO question, while also serving as the entry point for a multitude of scientific discussions presented in a way that a little old layperson like myself can easily understand. With the most soothing voice, Kelly gently demystifies a topic that can otherwise feel overwhelming with technical information. Basically, she makes science and philosophy topics easy to digest, so I encourage you to check out her podcast. It really has served as the starting off point for so many topics that inspired my own various tangential rabbit hole journeys. I cannot recommend her enough. I'll include her links in my show notes. So let's talk for a moment about the concept of ontological shock. Ontological shock is a term often used in philosophy and critical theory to describe a profound and disorienting experience that occurs when a person's fundamental beliefs and understanding of reality are challenged or shattered. It's the sensation of having one's entire worldview disrupted by the revelation of a previously unrecognized or unimagined aspect of existence. So, to be clear, it's not a medical condition, but a philosophical concept. Famed Greek philosopher Plato presented his allegory of the cave as a famous philosophical story that can be used to explain the concept of ontological shock to a layperson. Here's an abbreviated, overly simplified version of that story to help you get the concept. Imagine a cave where there are prisoners who have been inside since birth. They are chained in such a way that they can only see the wall in front of them. Behind them, there is a fire. And between the prisoners and the fire, there are people carrying objects, such as statues and animals, which cast shadows on a cave wall. The prisoners have never seen the outside world, or the people carrying the objects. All they know are the shadows on the wall, which they take to be the only reality. In this allegory, the cave represents the world as we perceive it, filled with our everyday experiences and beliefs. The prisoners symbolize individuals who are only aware of this surface-level reality and are ignorant of anything beyond it. They're experiencing what we might call a limited or shallow understanding of the world. Now, here's where ontological shock comes in. One day, if the prisoners were to be freed and forced to turn around and face the entrance of the cave, they would be exposed to the blinding light from the outside world. Initially, this person would be dazzled and in pain due to the brightness of the sun. This experience represents the ontological shock, a profound and disorienting realization that there is a deeper, more fundamental reality beyond what they had previously known. As the newly freed person becomes accustomed to the light, they would see the real objects and the outside world. They would realize that the shadows on the cave wall were mere illusions, and that there is a higher truth, a more genuine reality outside the cave. This revelation is what we call ontological shock. It's a transformative moment when someone discovers that their previous understanding of reality was limited and superficial. To connect this to everyday life, you can explain that ontological shock occurs when someone suddenly becomes aware of a deeper, more profound truth or reality that challenges their existing beliefs or perceptions. It's a significant and sometimes uncomfortable realization that forces them to reevaluate their understanding of the world. Just like the prisoner in the cave, when we experience ontological shock, we are confronted with the idea that there is more to reality than what we initially thought, and it can be a transformative and eye-opening experience. And if that allegory sounds an awful lot like a poetic description of an awakening of consciousness, it's because that's exactly what it's describing: waking up to a new, more honest reality, however harsh. This is why woke people are considered so dangerous to conservatives or those who want to hold on to the past. It's because those who wield the word as a vague, negative descriptor don't even realize that it's only because they are the ones who are asleep that those who know the truth, the real truth, must be described as being awake. Anyone who has ever had to come out of a metaphorical closet of any kind understands that closets are populated with people who would simply prefer to remain in the dark, pretending that anything outside the closet is somehow strange and less real than the interior, where they somehow feel more empowered. In a philosophical catch-22, they are unable to properly deride the word woke simply because being able to fully understand what it means would remove that desire completely. For a current example of ontological shock, let's take the context of UFOs or UAP. Ontological shock can be applied to the idea that humanity might have been in contact with non-human intelligence for decades, and possibly much longer. The recent disclosure of government documents and videos regarding unidentified flying objects could indeed possibly trigger ontological shock for many people. Here's how it could work in this context. Paradigm shift. For much of human history, the dominant belief has been that the Earth is the only planet with intelligent life. This belief forms a significant part of our collective worldview. When evidence emerges suggesting that there might be intelligent life beyond what we currently understand and that it has potentially interacted with humans, it challenges this deeply ingrained perspective. This shift is particularly jarring if you do not have a personal connection or interest in a culture that is more open to ideas of visitors from the stars, as told in many ancient indigenous folk tales and religious stories around the world. Cognitive dissonance. The revelation of UFO encounters, government documents, and credible witnesses creates a cognitive dissonance. People must reconcile their existing beliefs with the newfound evidence, and this can prove to be incredibly difficult. And depending on how invested an individual is in their existing beliefs, sometimes impossible. This dissonance can lead to discomfort and a sense of disbelief, causing ontological shock. Reevaluation of reality. As individuals grapple with the possibility of non-human intelligence and the implications of their existence, they may undergo a process of reevaluating their understanding of reality. This can lead to a profound shift in their worldview, akin to the prisoner in Plato's cave turning around to see the outside world. Emotional impact. Experiencing ontological shock in this context can be emotionally charged. It can generate feelings of wonder, fear, awe, or skepticism, as individuals come to terms with the possibility that their understanding of the universe is more complex and mysterious than previously thought. In summary, the concept of ontological shock is highly relevant when discussing the idea of human contact with non-human intelligence, especially in light of UFO disclosure. It represents the powerful and transformative impact that such revelations can have on our perception of reality, causing us to question the boundaries of what we thought was possible and reshaping our understanding of the world and our place in it. And for many people who are recently educating themselves, possibly for the first time, about the role white supremacy is playing in what is currently taking place in Palestine, which are the final, highly orchestrated steps that Israel and the U.S. are undertaking to unalive the few remaining Palestinian people still living there in the West Bank and Gaza, this new understanding has rocked their entire world. It may have even, quite possibly, rocked their personal understanding of themselves as people. I have to admit that while I was not nearly as knowledgeable about the situation in Palestine prior to October 7th, my perspective of being a member of the Latin American diaspora and the daughter of an independent-minded Colombian immigrant, I was exposed to more non-white opinions on U.S. interference in governments abroad than those shared by other people I knew whose skin color was the same as mine. I think it was this perspective, along with other elements about my background that have helped me foster this intellectual flexibility, that helped me to relatively quickly feel confident about my personal and political position on what is happening in Palestine, and why I feel personally obligated to try and speak to those individuals who might suspect deep down that this position might also be their true perspective as well, and maybe they'd appreciate some help processing that. For someone who maybe hasn't up until now completely reckoned with their individually being complicit in white supremacy, nor have they acknowledged the need to constantly actively engage in a divestment thereof on a literal daily basis, dealing with this ontological shock or the profound disruption of their understanding of the world can be incredibly challenging, traumatic even. With those thoughts in mind, I researched some methods to help individuals cope with and adapt to such transformative experiences, like the ones many of us are facing with relative frequency these days, that I would like to share with you now. Open-mindedness. It seems very simple and clear and straightforward, but a lot of people do resist it, myself included. Try to remind yourself regularly to have an open mind and be receptive to new information and perspectives. Emphasize that learning and growth often involve revising one's beliefs and adapting to new insights. I know that recently, I have had to be incredibly open-minded, forcing myself to remain humble throughout this entire process, making sure that my goal in all of my research was to truly come to a place of genuine understanding. I prefer knowing the truth over winning an argument. Education and research. Engage in further research and education about the new information or paradigm shift. Learning more about the subject can provide a more solid foundation for understanding and accepting the new reality. And, most importantly, consider the goals of these authors, teachers, digital creators, or journalists whose work you're following and learning from. Really check those credentials, and don't be afraid to do your own research from a variety of neutral sources. Are you finding that those to whom you have turned for your progressive social and political news and information are suddenly not aligning with you on this one particular topic? Maybe consider expanding your research sources, examining your blind spots. Whose voices have you never heard before? Always investigate what motivation the author of whatever article or book might have in presenting you this information. Often, those who stand to gain the least tend to be the most truthful, and therefore are considered inflammatory, and the most effort is made to suppress those voices. Notice who is actively being censored and ask yourself why this is happening. And even more importantly, who has the power to do the censoring? Mental resilience. You can help build your mental resilience by practicing mindfulness, meditation, or other relaxation techniques. These can be valuable for managing the stress and anxiety that may accompany ontological shock. Find or fine-tune whatever method you use to clear your mind. Consider what physical activities, stretching, sleeping, proper diet, hydration, self-medication routines best facilitate clear, calm thinking for you. Seek support from friends, family, or other groups who may have gone through similar experiences or who can provide emotional support and a safe space to discuss these thoughts and feelings. If you suspect you are in an echo chamber, maybe don't talk to those people about any new opinions if you feel they'll discourage you from research or will shut down an open discussion. Or explore social media accounts that are saying things that you suspect might be true, as upsetting as they might be. I've found this method to be particularly helpful when I'm looking for topics to research that I realize I don't yet know enough about to present a confident opinion to the public just yet. If the shock is particularly distressing or disruptive to your daily life, consider seeking help from a mental health professional, such as a therapist or counselor, whose values you feel you can trust. They can provide guidance and coping strategies for managing the emotional impact. I personally haven't done much therapy, but I have found several books about neurodivergent brains that really help me to understand my own brain. And for me, it's probably been just as useful as therapy would have been. I will include links to these in the show notes. Journaling. Keeping a journal to document your thoughts and emotions as you grapple with ontological shock can be therapeutic. Writing down your experiences and reflections can help you process those feelings and track personal growth. Honestly, that's what this podcast is. Having an outlet for me to document my emotional education and keep track of my experience is incredibly cathartic and educational. I'm finding it to be very socially gratifying as well. Gradual adjustment. Understand that you're likely to find the most success if you allow yourself a gradual adjustment to this new reality as you now understand it. Change of this magnitude doesn't happen overnight. Mistakes will be made. Backsliding and spells of what I like to call social amnesia may set in if you feel pressure to abandon new opinions and viewpoints when surrounded by those in your personal and professional life who do not feel the same. Allow time for yourself to come to terms with this new information and adjust your beliefs and perspectives at a pace that you can reasonably maintain. Critical thinking. Develop improved critical thinking skills to evaluate the new information critically and discern its credibility. This can reduce confusion and make it easier to navigate through the shock. Critical thinking describes the objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment, which basically means strive to take emotion and personal bias as much out of your assessment as humanly possible, recognizing that there will almost always be some remaining margin of bias, despite everyone's best intentions. Truly, it's this acknowledgement of bias that will ultimately bring you as close to the truth as humanly possible. What not to do. A great example of working against critical thinking is what I have encountered on social media with individuals who are angrily responding to my factual, often dispassionate commentary by explaining in great detail their personal connection to the issue being discussed. I found it so counterintuitive that I genuinely was surprised that they did not realize that the longer their explanation, the more damning their defensive position became. If this were a jury pool, you'd be dismissed immediately for a clear inability to be impartial to the evidence and testimony. Many times, I've seen Zionist supporters express a disbelief that a completely neutral party could have quickly and efficiently educated themselves with the historical facts of the situation, which are often undisputed by both parties, in such a short amount of time, not realizing that their emotionality is actually what is making the situation complex for them, and not someone who has come into the issue with no biases, if anything, most likely working against a vague pro-Israel bias. Understandably, this proximity to the subject makes it extra difficult for someone to pull themselves out of a counterproductive position. So I always strive to see how quickly I can remove emotionality from the discussion while also avoiding causing offense by continuing to stick to facts and using respectful language. Self-compassion. Remember to be compassionate with yourself during this process, without navel-gazing too much, of course. Forward motion, please. We truly don't have time to wallow. It's normal to feel uncertain and even overwhelmed when experiencing a profound shift in perspective. Self-compassion can help reduce self-judgment and anxiety. And ultimately, the sooner you're able to achieve peace in your thoughts about yourself and your new perspective, the sooner you'll be able to help those who might be in need of someone with a clear head and a strong voice. Engage in dialogue. Encourage open and constructive conversations with others who have experienced similar ontological shock. Sharing experiences and insights with a supportive community can be reassuring and provide a sense of belonging. If there's no one in your circle, IRL, who can have these conversations with you, consider anonymously making some political friends on social media with whom you can discuss your new views. For introverts and easily overly stimulated people like myself, social media offers an opportunity to connect with humans based pretty exclusively on shared interests and appreciation for the written word and visual interest. As problematic as it has the potential to be, social media plays a huge role in my social life and activism. And believe it or not, I get to live it as authentically as I like because of the boundaries I've set for myself and those whom I allow to interact with me. Ultimately, the key is to approach ontological shock as an opportunity for personal growth and expanded understanding. It's a chance to challenge one's existing beliefs and broaden their perspective, which in the long run can lead to a more enriched and nuanced worldview. I know that for me personally, I realized that there were certain topics or questions surrounding the situation in Gaza between the nation-state of Israel and the Palestinian people that I didn't even feel comfortable asking, based on what I now understand to have been pro-Israel propaganda that shaped my previously held vague opinions on the matter. So I can only imagine what a chilling effect that feeling is for anyone more emotionally invested in the situation, or who didn't feel empowered to speak out for whatever reason, personally or professionally. Fear kills curiosity. Certainly, fear can play a significant role in ontological shock and may act as a hindrance to an individual's ability to receive new information and adapt to a transformed understanding of reality. Fear of saying the wrong thing has left many people silent. When addressing that fear head on could actually help them most quickly get to that place of true self-reflection and calm that they so desperately crave. Living in fear of something you don't quite understand, based on receiving an accusation that you're feeling something you're not quite sure you've ever felt, understanding only that the stakes of saying the wrong thing with evidence of resulting demonstrable negative consequences can be debilitating and motivation enough to abandon all intellectual curiosity about the subject whatsoever. And usually, that's the whole point. This is exactly how I used to feel about the subjects of cannabis, hallucinogenics, and UFOs. And in those cases, fear-based propaganda and societal pressures caused me to take the path of least resistance and wait way too long to thoroughly investigate the subjects for myself and come to a vastly more well-rounded and open-minded conclusion. Here are some ways in which fear can impact the process of dealing with ontological shock. Fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown, unfamiliar and potentially unsettling concepts can be paralyzing, making it difficult to accept new information that challenges established beliefs. Along similar lines, fear of the discomfort caused by cognitive dissonance may also be enough to deter individuals from accepting this new information as they seek to maintain a sense of consistency in their beliefs. Loss of control. The revelation of a radically different reality can lead to a fear of losing control over one's life and understanding of the world. People often rely on familiar beliefs and structures to provide a sense of stability, and ontological shock disrupts that stability, even if this new information is valid and based in objective truth. And the cold, hard truth of the matter is, the better that white supremacy is currently working for you, the greater the potential loss of control you are likely currently experiencing. It's why so many disempowered groups and individuals are emboldened to speak up right now, while those with more money and clout are remaining silent. The thing is, those of us who are shouting the loudest already know the system is working against us and not for us, while those who are not either quietly realize it is working in their favor or are simply living in active denial of this fact. Societal and cultural pressure. Fear of social ostracism and criticism can also be a significant factor. If accepting the new information means going against the prevailing norms of one's culture or community, individuals may resist it due to the fear of rejection or stigmatization. I've seen more than a few examples of people in various industries finding themselves censored at work for expressing their position on Palestine, and in some cases, losing their jobs. There is a lot of professional and legislative pressure in the United States currently to exclusively express pro-Israel opinions publicly, which is a huge hint at who the oppressor is in this situation. Emotional impact. Fear can manifest as heightened emotions, such as anxiety, anger, or distress when confronted with ontological shock. These intense emotions can cloud rational judgment and make it challenging to process and accept new information. If you're not in an emotional place to receive the truth, you simply will not be able to. It's that simple. Existential anxiety. The idea that one's place in the world might be different from what they had believed can trigger existential anxiety. Fear of grappling with profound questions about the meaning and purpose of life can be overwhelming. And boy, do I get that. I literally experience this every day. The term late-stage capitalism isn't just a clever hashtag. It's very visibly what we are currently experiencing in all aspects of our society around the globe. And with people finding themselves growing fearful that AI or robots could take away their livelihoods, more and more people are waking up to the fact that this fear itself is most likely a horrifying suspicion that if a robot can do their job, it's quite possible that they've been living a robotic life. And isn't that the real horror show? So now that we've gotten ourselves nice and fearful, let's take a positive left turn, shall we? To address these fears and facilitate a more open reception of new information during ontological shock, here are some things you can do. Acknowledging your fear. Acknowledging your fears can help you recognize that these emotions are a natural defensive response to significant changes in your understanding of reality. If you're saying to yourself, great, I'm feeling all of these things and about a million other feelings, so how does this help? As much as it might sound overly simplistic, acknowledging that you're experiencing these feelings, maybe even just saying it out loud to yourself and no one else, can help you to sort out what your base reality is. It never hurts to do an emotional check-in to ask yourself if you're possibly the victim of some friendly self-gaslighting, hoping to protect your brain from the trauma of a dramatic change of opinion. Or if you really, truly do feel this adamantly about your position, based solely on the facts and data. Sometimes I find that all the ghost in the basement wants is some acknowledgement that they do in fact exist, so they can go on about their day existing, but maybe not haunting me quite as aggressively as they were before. It's more like we've reached an agreement to be polite roommates for now. Emotional regulation. Try emotional regulation techniques, such as mindfulness and meditation, to help manage emotional responses and reduce the intensity of fear. I find that breathing exercises can help with emotional regulation in the moment. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Filling up your belly from the very bottom and emptying it out slowly, all the way until you calmly begin the cycle again. Using the rhythm of your breath as a calming tool is an ancient practice with proven health benefits. And last but not least, positive reinforcement. Highlight the potential benefits of embracing the new information, such as personal growth, expanded understanding, and a more comprehensive worldview. If you genuinely care about being a better person, there's really no more satisfying pursuit than the truth. I know I sound like a truther when I say it, but it's true. Overcoming the fear associated with ontological shock is a complex and personal process, but I can say from personal experience that the more you strive to check your ego at the door, the easier it will be each time. You might even find that the time you need to adapt to new ideas gets shorter and shorter as these logical connections you've wondered about in life all start snapping cleanly into place and the world becomes a slightly less confusing place every single day. So guys, that is my first dive into a discussion about ontological shock. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to be continuing this discussion of critical thinking methods and different concepts to illustrate Plato's cave because this is my personal rabbit hole right now. Thank you again so much for joining me. I hope this ending is a sufficient length and not at all abrupt for you. So with that said, please have a great weekend. Okay, bye.